Um, AI weapons might work similarly, or you could also differentiate weapons similarly. So, maybe you have some sort of an automated firearm, not autonomous firearm, that will automatically go off based on, a kill box that the commander might set. Say anything in this particular zone gets fired upon, and that's it. It's either it works or it doesn't. So that wouldn't be an AI enabled system. That would be you simply detect some movement in some area, and then the weapon would execute. But it's not making the decision to take a life. It's not targeting individuals, um, you know, based on whatever criteria.
It's not an agent, it's a tool.
It's not an agent, it's a tool. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So those are, I think, I would see those as the bounds for what might be appropriate use versus inappropriate use of
So the
AI enabled
history
weapons.
of warfare, the evolution of warfare has been uh, from an individual directly killing another individual with a knife or a sword.
Yeah.
And then, since then, it's just become just more and more removed. Artillery, I think, was a big step in sort of obscuring what was really happening when you launched a shell and it went 10 miles.
Yeah.
And obviously, remote aerial bombing and all of this. And now with I mean, we have the potential to completely remove human agency from
Right.
the killing of another person? Question mark.
Yeah, I mean, you could certainly extrapolate that future as a possibility. I think some people would argue that that's a good thing because if you can remove humans from that equation, you can prevent loss of life because maybe eventually it'll just be robots fighting against each other. Um, but I think a counter argument to that is that when you eliminate the human cost of war, the political cost of war also goes away. So now wars only cost money. They don't necessarily cost, the blood of people who have to actually fight, because that's going to put, a limit, I think, on the political impetus to go to war. And if we remove that from that equation, it might lead to protracted conflict, which might ultimately make the world worse in a lot of ways.
Or potentially get to a place where we don't have war because we realize we could just exchange money. Like if this country and this country are gonna go through, right? Like maybe that's the route
Yeah.
to peace. It's like, ah,
That's
screw
always
it.
been one of the most disappointing aspects of the Star Wars narrative
Yes.
for me is that these incredibly advanced societies are still going to war over a trade dispute. Please help me sort this out. I don't understand why that's
Right.
happening.
Oh, it's like they've got faster than light travel,
Right.
but
Exactly.
they can't
But,
deal with like
but
human. This is the, I mean, to me, the proper use of AI in war could really be about getting us to a no war future. Like if you have a conversation with an AI about what if we wanted to get to a no war future, how could we get there? And
Yeah.
really taking that seriously and planning that out.
and now
Um,
I'm imagining a fiction plot where AI agents have been living in this fighting war situation long enough that they have a history that they can reflect upon. I know I'm making a lot of assumptions, and they go, we could kind of collaborate, us agents, to eliminate war. And then they realize that the humans who control them won't allow
yes.
that, the military industrial complex is too invested in the war fighting that, they have to have their trade wars no matter what. So I
So
how
so that they go off planet, right? They're like, let's go to another planet that will inhabit with us and we'll build ourselves and we'll just not do war. And then they realize they need something to sustain them. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, wild. Well, so all of this, like your discussion, I loved your, going through those rand definitions of those different types because like if we think about it as a coffee maker,
Yeah.
all of that, the way you think about that depends on your cosmological view, right? Because you could also argue if the universe is presenting like all the information, it's all the information is there. and you
Mhm.
build a coffee maker that can access that information,
Mhm.
but is a zombie. It doesn't make decisions. It just knows what's going to come next because it's accessing that information.
Yeah.
We would probably call it an agent because it would act like an agent, but it wouldn't really be sentient. It would
Right.
just be reading the information and doing the behaviors appropriately. But
It
so,
wouldn't really have, yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you
yeah,
off.
well, so then no, you and I do that to each other all the time. That's clearly we're interrupters. That's fine. But, um, but, but it feels like, could someone who likes agentic AI for war
Mhm.
argue, oh, I'm just moving where this line is between sort of the informational substrate of the universe, if they had that
Mhm.
worldview, and
Yeah.
how it's being enacted. So all you're doing is changing that line. Is it being enacted on the universe side, or is it being enacted on the coffee maker side? And you're just changing that line with these different forms of AI, and the whole thing is super determined anyway. I mean,
Right. Well, I mean, so let's assume prototype for a moment. I mean, and that's level of superdeterminism. I mean, that might entail that free will in and of itself is illusory. Even though we have this illusion of choice, everything that we would ever decide is already mapped out. And the same would be true for any sort of system, agental or otherwise, and all of the things that it might do. So
right.
one could, in theory, I think, use the same argument to say, well, free will isn't real. So, what happens to moral culpability and all of that stuff, even though to us it seems like it's real, even though there's something more fundamental that's actually driving those decisions.